They believed fear was the only language power understood. That was their mistake, because humanity had learned something far more dangerous: patience. The Grand Forum of the Galactic Council was designed to overwhelm. It floated at the core of Nexus Prime, a colossal station suspended where multiple hyperspace corridors intersected. The chamber's ceiling arched so high that mist gathered near its peak, artificial clouds drifting lazily above polished stone and living metal walls. Precious minerals from conquered systems were embedded into every surface, trophies disguised as decoration. 12 massive thrones formed a perfect circle, each occupied by a representative of the most dominant species in known space. At the center of that circle stood one man. Human. Alone. Ethan Cross was 54, with silver threading through his dark hair and a face shaped by exhaustion rather than age. His posture was straight, composed, despite the glowing restraint cuffs binding his wrists. He wore a plain charcoal diplomatic uniform, intentionally unremarkable. Anyone watching closely might have noticed his calm was not resignation. It was calculation. High Arbiter Korthax leaned forward from his elevated seat. His species, the Varkeen, were tall and scaled, their hides the color of oxidized iron, eyes burning amber beneath heavy ridges. For 300 years, the Varkeen had steered the Council, not through strength alone, but by ensuring no one else ever gained enough power to oppose them. Ethan Cross of Earth, Korthax intoned, his voice amplified and resonant. You are charged with covert interference in Council affairs, economic destabilization of border systems, and incitement of rebellion among protected client species. How do you respond? Cross lifted his gaze slowly. The charges are fabricated, he said evenly, and every being in this chamber knows it. A ripple of murmurs spread through the observation tiers where thousands of spectators watched, envoys, analysts, journalists from dozens of worlds. Humanity was still considered a newcomer, having entered the interstellar community barely a century earlier. Humans were unsettling. They asked questions no one else dared. They formed alliances where none were permitted. Worst of all, they treated lesser-designated species as equals. Ethan Cross had embodied everything the Council found dangerous. In 15 years as a diplomat, he had negotiated trade routes that bypassed Council monopolies. He had helped fringe colonies become independent instead of dependent. He had uncovered corruption buried so deep it was thought unreachable. He had done all of it legally. That was the problem. The tribunal has reviewed the evidence, Korthax continued. The verdict is unanimous. Guilty on all charges. Cross nodded once, unsurprised. And the sentence? He asked. Korthax's thin smile carried satisfaction. Execution. 3 cycles from now. Here on Nexus Prime. Public. The chamber erupted. Some cheered. Others protested. The human delegation sat frozen, shock etched across their faces. Earth had filed appeals. Demanded transparency. All dismissed without discussion. Cross waited for silence. When it came, his voice cut through the chamber, calm and precise. I suggest you reconsider. Korthax's eyes narrowed. Is that a threat? No, Cross replied. It's professional advice. A few council members shifted uneasily. I've spent 15 years studying how this council operates, Cross continued. I've watched you exploit weaker systems, erase cultures, manufacture crises to justify control. And while doing so, I made sure to remember everything. You are insignificant, Korthax snapped. Your species holds a handful of colonies and a modest fleet. You are not even full council members. A faint smile touched Cross's lips. Humanity has never needed permission to matter. The Arbiter gestured sharply. Remove him. Maximum security. No errors. Council enforcers moved in, towering armored beings with multifaceted eyes and serrated limbs. Cross offered no resistance as they escorted him from the chamber. As they passed through the towering doors, he subtly rotated his wrist. His fingers brushed a thin band hidden beneath his sleeve. It wasn't a weapon. It was a signal. Light years away, in a star system absent from all official maps, a silent alert blinked to life aboard a vessel drifting in perfect darkness. The ship was called Quiet Resolve. Its hull absorbed sensor scans. Its engines whispered instead of roared. Captain Marcus Hale stared at the indicator, jaw tightening. Signal verified, his officer said softly. Protocol Atlas engaged. Hale exhaled slowly. He had trained years for this moment, praying it would never arrive. Wake the network, he ordered. We have 72 hours. Back on Nexus Prime, Cross was led through luminous corridors toward a detention level buried deep within the station. He ignored the stares of passing aliens, his thoughts already far ahead. 15 years of preparation. Hidden archives. Quiet alliances. Favors carefully earned. The Council believed they were executing a troublesome human. They had no idea they were triggering something far larger. Inside his energy-sealed cell, Cross sat on the narrow bench and closed his eyes. In 3 days, he would either walk free or die. Either way, the galaxy would not be the same. On Earth, alarms were already sounding. Beneath Earth's capital, far below layers of reinforced stone and silent security fields, a room came alive with motion. Walls became screens. Data streams ignited. Faces appeared. Military leaders, intelligence chiefs, analysts who had waited years for a signal they hoped would never come. Admiral Rebecca Sloane stood at the center of it all. Her hair was steel gray, cut short for practicality, and her eyes carried the steady calm of someone who had already accepted the weight of impossible decisions. She had commanded fleets, ended wars, and buried friends. None of that prepared her for this. The signal is confirmed, an aide reported. Atlas protocol is active. The room fell silent. Sloane nodded once. Then Ethan has been sentenced. No one needed to say the word execution. Time window? Asked Director Cole of Earth Intelligence. 72 hours, Sloane replied. Exactly as planned. Extraction? Someone asked. She shook her head. Nexus Prime is the most fortified structure in known space. A military strike would fail and hand the Council justification to erase us. Then what do we do? Sloane turned toward the central display. It shifted, revealing a vast web of interconnected systems, communication relays, financial networks, governance archives, military command chains. 15 years of quiet access points. 15 years of patience. We follow his plan, she said. We remind the Council that power built on secrecy collapses when exposed to light. Across deep space, the Quiet Resolve docked with an object that looked like an ordinary asteroid drifting near a dim red star. As its hull slid open, the illusion shattered. Beneath the rock-like exterior lay one of humanity's greatest secrets. The Crucible. Not a weapons factory. Not a fleet yard. A training ground. Inside, hundreds of men and women moved with disciplined purpose. They were linguists, cyber architects, economists, sociologists, system infiltrators. Humanity's answer to an enemy that could not be outgunned. Commander Elena Ruiz met Captain Hale at the command ring. Her expression was composed, but her eyes burned with restrained intensity. I was hoping we'd never activate this, she said. So was Ethan, Hale replied. That's why he made sure it would work. The central hologram shifted, highlighting dozens of targets. We're not destroying anything, Ruiz explained. We're revealing. Carefully. Precisely. First release. Hale asked. The trial data, she said. Unedited. Metadata intact. Proof of fabrication, witness payments, internal directives. Let the galaxy see what justice looks like behind closed doors. On Nexus Prime, High Arbiter Korthax was midway through a private meal when his assistant entered, pale with unease. There's been a breach, the aide said. Korthax's mandibles tightened. Define breach. The sealed records of the Cross Tribunal are now public. Everywhere. Korthax rose so quickly his chair toppled backward. Impossible. Those systems are isolated. They were, the aide said quietly. Verification codes confirm authenticity. Analysts are already reviewing them. Anger flared, but beneath it stirred something unfamiliar. Concern. Release a statement, Korthax snapped. Claim fabrication. Human manipulation. That may not hold, the aide replied. The evidence cross-verifies independently. For the first time, the arbiter felt the faint chill of uncertainty. Over the next hours, more disclosures followed. Financial diversions meant for humanitarian aid. Secret conflict instigation logs. Agreements with criminal syndicates disguised as trade pact. Each revelation spread through neutral channels, impossible to trace. On Earth, Admiral Sloan watched the reaction metrics climb. Phase 1 complete, Director Cole said. Public confidence in the Council is dropping fast. Not enough, Sloan replied. Korthax will still proceed out of pride. She paused, then nodded. Initiate Phase 2. At the Crucible, Ruiz issued the command. Across Council territory, systems hiccup. Nothing catastrophic. Navigation delays. Banking slowdowns. Communication relays briefly misaligned. Inconvenience, not destruction. A demonstration. Emergency sessions erupted across Nexus Prime. Engineers found no malware. No intrusion. The systems behaved as if they had simply allowed it. This is human aggression, Korthax thundered before the assembly. Or human capability, countered Arbiter Selene of the Vidron. Perhaps the question is why they have such access. Because we underestimated them, another voice murmured. In his cell, Ethan Cross watched a small drone slip through the energy barrier like it belonged there. It projected a brief message. Still moving. He smiled faintly. Then came the moment that changed everything. On the Varkeen homeworld, planetary defense grids went dark. Not destroyed. Disabled. A message appeared on every government display. This was a demonstration. No damage done. Next time may not be. 60 seconds later, the systems returned to normal. No casualties. No trace. Only fear. Korthax stared at the report, scales dull with shock. Humanity had reached across light years and silenced his world without firing a shot. The execution was scheduled for the next cycle. And for the first time in centuries, the Council's grip was trembling. The final cycle before the execution began under artificial lights that slowly brightened across Nexus Prime, mimicking a sunrise no one truly felt. The station moved as it always had, ships docking, corridors filling, officials traveling between sealed meetings, but beneath the routine pulsed a growing tension. Everyone sensed it. Something fundamental was breaking. High Arbiter Korthax had not rested. His private chambers were cluttered with data projections and half-heard arguments echoing from emergency council sessions. Advisors spoke in cautious tones now. No one raised their voice anymore. Fear had replaced certainty. Multiple council members are requesting a formal review, his chief aide reported. Several delegations have withdrawn from the proceedings entirely. They are panicking, Korthax growled. The humans are bluffing. They want us to hesitate. Sir, the defense grid demonstration was theater, Korthax snapped. Nothing more. Yet his claws trembled slightly as he dismissed the aide. At midday, the impossible happened. For exactly 1 minute, every secure council communication channel lost its privacy. Messages intended for one recipient became visible to all. Whispered alliances. Hidden betrayals. Decades of contempt laid bare in real time. Then the network sealed itself again. Silence followed. Then chaos. Delegates shouted accusations. Ancient allies recoiled from one another. Several species abruptly announced their departure from Nexus Prime, fearing what else might surface. This was no longer about one human. It was about the survival of the Council itself. In his cell, Ethan Cross listened to the distant alarms and raised voices. He didn't need details. He knew the sequence. He had lived it in simulations and contingency briefings for over a decade. A guard appeared at his door, posture tense. The High Arbiter wants to see you. Cross stood calmly and followed. The corridors felt different now, crowded, urgent, unstable. Officials rushed past, no longer composed. The illusion of control was cracking. Korthax waited in a private chamber, alone. His scales had lost their metallic sheen, dulled by sleeplessness. "Call them off," Korthax said without preamble. "Call who?" Cross asked, sitting uninvited. "You know exactly what I mean," the Arbiter hissed. "Your people are dismantling our systems." "No," Cross replied. "We're letting them speak. You will be executed tonight." "Then this continues," Cross said evenly. Korthax slammed a claw against the table. "You think this ends well for you?" "I think it ends truthfully. You're destabilizing civilization." "You destabilized it long before I arrived," Cross said. "We're just making sure everyone can finally see the damage." The meeting ended without resolution. Across the galaxy, Admiral Sloane received the update she had been expecting. "Korthax won't yield," Director Cole said. "He'll proceed just to prove he can." Sloane closed her eyes briefly, then opened them with resolve. "Authorize Phase 3. At the Crucible, Commander Ruiz hesitated only a second before issuing the command. Messages went out, not to human operatives but to others, to species stripped of resources, to worlds taxed into starvation, to movements silenced and erased. The message was simple: you are not alone. On Nexus Prime, something unprecedented unfolded. Representatives from marginalized systems demanded emergency audience, not as petitioners but as equals. "We demand review of the charges against Ethan Cross," declared Ambassador Rin of the Talori. "And we demand reform of Council judicial authority." "You have no standing," Korthax snarled. "Perhaps not alone," Rin replied. "But we are not alone anymore." One by one, others stood. 23 species. The chamber fractured before Korthax's eyes. In Cross's cell, a full hologram of Admiral Sloane appeared, invisible to surveillance. "It's working," she said. "But he may accelerate the execution." "I expected that," Cross replied. "What's the contingency?" Sloane explained. Cross listened carefully, then nodded. "Risky. Necessary." When the hologram vanished, Cross leaned back, staring at the energy barrier. He had always known this could end with his death. What mattered was whether it meant something. The final cycle arrived. As the Council convened to finalize the sentence, a single ship emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Nexus Prime's sensor range. White hull. No weapons. Its name broadcast openly. Peace offering. Defense fleets locked targeting systems instantly. A comm transmission followed. "This is Admiral Rebecca Sloane of the United Earth Coalition. I request lawful audience with the Galactic Council regarding the case of Ethan Cross. Refusing would look like guilt." Permission was granted. The ship docked under heavy escort. Sloane entered the chamber alone, wearing formal diplomatic attire. She stood where Cross had stood days earlier. "I'm not here to beg," she said. "I'm here to offer you a way out." Korthax laughed bitterly. "You threaten us with secrets." "No," Sloane replied. "We offer silence. In exchange for justice." She listed the terms. Release Cross. Publicly acknowledge procedural misconduct. Begin structural reform. "And if we refuse?" Korthax asked. Sloane looked around the chamber. "Then everything comes out." Before Korthax could answer, guards entered, escorting Ethan Cross. The execution was minutes away. Korthax raised his claw. "This farce ends now." The guards froze. So did every Varkeen in the chamber. Sloane held up a compact device. Temporary neural suppression. Species-specific. Harmless. She stepped forward and removed Cross's restraints. "We could have taken him by force," she said to the chamber. "We chose not to. This is your final choice." Cross met Korthax's gaze. "Change or collapse." Silence stretched. Then a voice rose. I call for a vote, said Arbiter Selene. Hands began to rise. The balance of power shifted. History held its breath. The chamber held its breath as the final votes were counted. One by one, illuminated panels shifted color, signaling decisions that would echo through history. When the tally completed, the result was undeniable. 7 of the 12 ruling species had voted in favor. A majority. The neural suppression field disengaged with a soft hum. The Varkeen representatives staggered as control returned to their bodies. High Arbiter Korthax caught himself against the arm of his throne, his authority evaporating in front of the entire galaxy. The motion carries, Arbiter Selene announced. Ethan Cross is released. A Judicial Reform Council will be established immediately. All pending executions under disputed authority are suspended. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then the chamber erupted, not in chaos but in something far more dangerous to the old order. Hope. Cross flexed his wrists where the restraints had been and stepped forward. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. This doesn't have to be the end of the council, he said. It can be the end of what the council became. Korthax stared at him, fury and disbelief warring across his features. You think this is victory? No, Cross replied calmly. This is accountability. Without another word, Korthax turned and left the chamber. It wasn't surrender. It wasn't defiance. It was retreat. And everyone understood what that meant. In the days that followed, the galaxy shifted. Markets stabilized as suppressed trade data was released and corrected. Border worlds received long-delayed aid. Species that had never held a voice within the council were suddenly invited into discussions that shaped their futures. The Varkeen withdrew from central leadership. Their dominance ended not with war, but with exposure. On Earth, celebrations were muted. No parades, no speeches of conquest. Admiral Sloane returned quietly, declining every political appointment offered to her. She had done what she set out to do. Protect one of their own. 6 months later, Nexus Prime felt different. The station still gleamed, but its halls were louder now. Messier. More alive. Delegations argued openly. Reforms moved slowly, imperfectly, but forward. Ethan Cross stood in his modest office overlooking the stars. He had accepted a permanent advisory seat, not as a ruler, not as a conqueror, but as a witness and a reminder. Commander Ruiz entered, carrying a data slate. The Talori delegation is ready. Give me a moment, Cross said. She nodded and left. Cross looked out at the traffic flowing between worlds. He thought of the Crucible, now being dismantled and repurposed. No longer a shadow network, but an open research initiative shared among species who once would have been forbidden to collaborate. He thought of Captain Hale, back on patrol, refusing commendations. Of Admiral Sloane, walking beneath real skies again. Of the countless beings who would never know how close everything had come to collapse. A chime sounded. Sloane appeared on the screen, older, calmer. I wanted to see it with my own eyes, she said. You did it. We did, Cross corrected. She smiled. The Council won't forget this. They shouldn't, he said. Neither should we. After the call ended, Cross rose and headed toward his meeting. Trade negotiations. Infrastructure rebuilding. 1,000 small, exhausting details that would determine whether this fragile peace endured. Far from Nexus Prime, on a quiet world once stripped bare by exploitative mining, a memorial stood. Children visited it on school journeys. Teachers spoke of the quiet turning, when power shifted without bloodshed. An elderly man stood before the stone wall one afternoon, reading the names carved there. A child asked him, were humans the strongest species? He shook his head. No. Then how did you change everything? The man smiled gently. We refused to accept that cruelty was normal. The child thought about that as she ran back to her class. Above them, the stars burned cold and endless. The galaxy had not become perfect, but it had become possible. And that, Cross believed, was enough to begin again.